Hey there, this is a recap for session 62, Castles and Crusades campaign. This session I had 4 players. We had Lork, Sprawl, Cosmo, and Renee for our characters. Started them off, they knew ahead of time, the players did, that in game we're going to give them about a month of downtime after their exploits in the Underdark to recover from that. So it's about midsummer in Arden, where the game is set, where they return to. So I kind of went around the table to each player and just asked what their character was up to, and that's how we started the session. So we started with Lork, and he primarily been training Bruin, the young Ronan's younger brother, to be a ranger. And if you, in the last session, I think I mentioned that in our Discord, Steve had wrote this really cool narrative thing about Ronan's father coming to Lork and asking him to train Bruin, because Bruin was hell-bent on following in his brother's footsteps, and that he didn't want him to do it, especially after just losing his eldest son, but he knew he was going to do it, and Ronan had always spoken to his father highly of Lork, his abilities and his even like his morality to some point, and so Ronan's dad knew that if his son Bruin was going to do this, he wanted him to do it with somebody that was respected. So, and that's Lork. So Lork has been spending time training Bruin. He's been he described Lork as being a rather harsh taskmaster, not like maliciously harsh, but Lork is really getting to understand and has seen the dangers of the world. I mean, he's in game mechanics, he's only 7th level, but they've been through a lot. He's seen several comrades be killed, and just horrible dangers that they've already faced, from the Underdark to demons to giants and other things. So he knows how dangerous it is. So he's hard on Bruin because he knows that, and he tries to impart to him that he's ultimately, people are going to come to rely on him, and he needs to be prepared for those tasks. So, and in the shadows of all this training is Lork's mentor, Seamus. And Seamus is watching, like giving Lork his distance, but he's watching. But he's watching not only Bruin, he's watching Lork to see how he does, passing on this knowledge, and he approves so far. Like Lork's actually doing a really good job of it. So that was Lork. Cosmo, we switched to Cosmo, which was fun. Cosmo has become a little less caring, much more drinking and food indulgent. He was described as putting on some weight, very free with his money. And everywhere he goes, his dog Hooch goes with him. And Hooch is this big lazy hound that rivals Cosmo for laziness. And Chris, who plays Cosmo, described Cosmo as being basically a total mess. Like he's just really overindulging in the finer things of life. But that was Cosmo in a nutshell. Sprawl, he's working on his plans for his own alehouse, which is also would be a temple to his god Throster, the brewing god, the dwarven brewing god. He's also been spending time with Renee, and checking in on the others members of the party. Sprawl's kind of become almost like the father figure of the group. He is the oldest. He's actually fairly old for a dwarf. In Arden, he's like 150 years old, which is significant to the setting. But he's just been checking in on the others, making sure they're doing all right. Renee and him kind of have either a plan in mind for like a joint venture, with Renee cooking in whatever alehouse Sprawl comes up with. And from what I understand, Matt, who plays Sprawl, is actually working on a plan for an ale house. So I'm interested to see all that shake out. He's also been spending time making potions, and because of his above board last level, he made it to 7th level, and he can make potions that have a 2nd level ability. So he's been working on that stuff. Renee, he put a down payment on a house in Arden, which he is quickly painted in a very gaudy blue color. But he's been cooking and hanging out with Sprawl and generally just relaxing and polishing up his fancy fish motif armor. Barry, my buddy Dave couldn't make the sessions, but we had talked outside of the game, and Barry's been spending most of his time either researching what they need to get the pieces of the Rod of 7 parts together, which they have the first 2 pieces now, and training Moira, the young woman that they found with the fire giants in the Underdark, as his apprentice, and she's basically now the equivalent of a 1st level wizard, and he's trained her up. And I've kind of turned that all over to Dave, so like what spells she learns and stuff like that. Or what Barry teaches her, so he picks all that stuff out and saves me from doing it. So yeah, they did a little bit of shopping. They refreshed their potions, which they'd expended in the Underdark. I kind of came up with a new system for that on the fly. So mostly they just buy healing potions, which was fine. And I just roll a certain amount of dice for each level that they want of healing potion. And that's how many that are available. So it keeps it random, and then there's not an unending supply of them also. So, which there wouldn't be. It doesn't make sense realistically for that to happen. So they did that. They end up in character. They have a meeting at Scranton Hall in Arden. And from that, they learn through the research that Barry's done that Moira actually talks about her elders from her village. There's stories of them visiting this castle in the clouds. Her village was near the base of the God Peak Mountains, and they would go and they'd visit this castle in the cloud, and they would meet with this person, this being called Nesna the Beautiful, and to seek advice. She had only known one elder in her lifetime to go do that, and it was he had gone there because of the rising trouble with giants, and he went there to seek guidance. But their village was hit by giants before he returned. She doesn't know what happened to him. This also, for those that I think it's everybody but Renee probably, who had traveled in the Underdark and met Unglock, the stone giant. In his cave, he had painted many, many murals, and one of them was of this castle in the clouds. And he had mentioned to them about, they'd asked him about it, and at the time, and he had said it belonged to Nesna the Beautiful, and that he had been there a long time ago, but it's been centuries since he'd been there since. So with that in mind, they're like, well, maybe they're thinking they could go talk to this Nesna and maybe get some insight on the beings that they need to approach to make the brush, which is the key component in joining the pieces of the Rod of 7 parts together. So they do that. They decide that that's what they're going to do. They're going to head further north into lands they haven't ventured into before, and they need to access a thing Moria describes to them. It's called the Pass of 10,000 Steps, and that leads to the castle in the clouds. This greatly distresses Cosmo at the thought of having to walk 10,000 steps, but as he's reminded by some of the other characters, he needs to lose a little weight. So he's just going to have to grin and bear it, I guess. So they make plans to leave that next day, and they make their preparations. That morning, they all meet at one of Barry's wagons, which he's expanding on that stuff for a side business, but he has one also for transport. All except Cosmo. Cosmo is not there. So they go, and I don't remember who it was. It was either, it might have been Lork that went to get Cosmo. I don't remember. He's overslept because he's lazy. His house is in total disarray. It's already gaudily furnished anyway with really nice stuff, but none of it matches. And he's laying there, and there's like food laying around and empty wine bottles. And so they get him awake and get his stuff together, and they're on their way. As they're leaving, they're going up the road to meet with the others. Cosmo looks back at his house, and he sees this image of his brother Roscoe, like waving goodbye to him. And then over his shoulder is the ambassador, and he's got the big toothy grin and with this extra wide mouth, almost like the mouth of Sauron from the Return of the King movie. And he's grinning and waving back, and he puts a hand on Roscoe's shoulder, and then when Cosmo looks away and then looks back, they're gone. But that was only Cosmo sees this. That's how they depart Arden. They head north, and they're following a familiar route. They're going to stop in at the town of Highhold, which is up in the Jagged Hills. Highhold, they'd been to in past. It was in total ruin. There was a refugee camp from the survivors. Artemis, the character Artemis, is from Highhold. It had been destroyed by the bugbear hosts, and they plan to stop in. They've learned through townspeople and stuff that they are rebuilding. So they reached there with no difficulty. Trying to think. Oh, they do spend a couple nights on the road, and during one of those nights, before they get to Highhold, Renee is able to fire up this ghost pepper chicken recipe, which Steve comes up with all of this on his own, which is great. But it gives some resistance to like fire damage because he was successful with his role. So didn't come into play, but it was a really neat effect, and that only lasts for a day. So, but it can be used again if Renee has the right ingredients. He can cook that stuff up again and use it. Lork does some hunting, gets a deer for them, which Renee takes care of, and they have more food for travel. But they eventually reach Highhold. They meet with Gorman, who's the unofficial, not really unofficial anymore. He's the leader of the town. They also see some other familiar faces like Bothild, the female barbarian that they had met before. There's Esmeralda Whitford, who's a halfling that actually accompanied them the last time they went to Highhold to meet with her, to find her relatives. And she is with her cousin Melba. And they've started up gathering herbs and also tracking food stores that are delivered to Highhold from Iredale Stronghold to help these people get back on their feet. Gorman talks about that there's actually an issue. The reason how they meet up with Bothild again is she actually gets into a fight with several of the construction people working the construction that she's also helping with, and Gorman goes on to explain that Bothild is really just always itching to fight like this. That's what she's from the north, even further north. She just grew up in Highhold, but she really is always itching for a fight. So she's a good worker, but she's always fighting with the other men, and so they see her. She's got a little bit of blood coming out of her nose, and then later on they see a couple people that she was working with, and they're much worse off. She kind of got the best of them. Anyway, they interact with these townfolk, and they decide to try to throw like a feast for them to help them out, and so in part, like Renee, he works with Esmeralda and Melba, and they're getting spices and checking with what food stores they have, and they have the deer that's left over, but there's a lot of people there. So Lork, a lot of mouths to feed. So Lork decides to go hunting, and he does. He goes off into the woods and starts hunting, and quickly finds some game, to include a huge boar. and he starts tracking that boar and even sets up a trap for it and waits for it. And it doesn't take too long. The boar springs the trap, but what he quickly realizes, this boar is massive. Like, it is just a huge beast. And the trap, like, it's like a snare trap that catches its foot. And it literally charges, it sees Lork and charges him and just rips the tree that it's in right out of the ground. This is a massive, massive boar. So Lork and his warg animal companion, Fenris, they start fighting this thing. And it's a pretty decent fight. Lork takes a good hit. Fenris is tossed around. Initially, that's what happens first. Like, I think Fenris, it gets a hold of Fenris and just tosses Fenris into the woods, which Lork has never seen any. Fenris is a warg. He's very large as well. He's never seen him just tossed aside. Lork takes a pretty good hit. I rolled a crit, actually, and wounded him. But they go back and forth until Lork finally brings this thing down, and it's just massive. It's got to weigh close to like 500 pounds. Like, it's just this huge boar. And this was a fun encounter because it actually was a lot of this session so far was completely just on the fly, kind of ad-libbed, as far as like just me reacting to what the characters tell me they're doing, and then them coming up with what they're doing. Like, all of it's been kind of ad-libbed. So this whole thing was greatly expounded on, which was neat for everybody, especially my son playing Lork, because like he didn't expect that. Like, he expected just a simple hunt and then back to town, and it turned into a little thing. But Lork brings this huge beast back, and everybody's raving about it, and other hunters are talking about they'd seen it, and some hunters said they'd seen it before, and nobody believed them because it was so big. But they end up having this huge feast, and it goes over really well. It really, their reputation with the town was these refugees was really good to begin with from their previous time here, and now it's just elevated even more. So they're very well regarded, and there was a lot of really good role play with the different characters. Bothild meets up with the party and actually offers to come north with them. That's her homeland where they're going, and she wants to return there. Like, she's not meant for town living. She needs to be in the wilds and fighting. She wants to fight. So she agrees to join. Renee goes right to town preparing this whole feast, and then they that next day though they head out and they head north through this what's called the Northern Pass, and it brings them around it's a forested path. It kind of goes through a saddle. There's a mountain range called the Fingers, and they have to go through that, and it kind of leads them around that. So they're almost, that takes a couple days for them to do, but they're almost to the end of it when Lork, who's doing his duty as the forward scout, he comes across this tracks of this basically a fairly decent sized band, and he doesn't recognize the tracks. He knows they're humanoid, and some are really big, like close to, like, it reminds him of ogre tracks. So he scouts ahead, and he sees what ultimately turns out to be a few hobgoblins gathering firewood, and he can kind of make out in their language, which is has some mix of goblinoid in it, which he does speak. They're talking about how they had to keep the fire low tonight. He goes back, warns the rest of the party, then they stealth up and they find this campsite here on the table. And what they see is a bunch of hobgoblins, which they haven't encountered before. The party hasn't faced hobgoblins yet. But with the hobgoblins, there's some of these, two of these guys. These big, like, whoops, see if I can get him on the camera. These guys here. There's a couple different ones. See if I can hold them up so they're both somewhat in frame. They see these guys. And they're not familiar with what they are at all. They're kind of in between the size of an ogre and a hill giant. And they decide then there's a bunch of hobgoblins. So they attack. Battle ensues. The first thing they notice is a couple characters charge in, like Renee, and I think Lork did. They get some characters in melee. Bothild does. The first thing they notice is the hobgoblins actually use tactics and start, like, positioning themselves not in the front of them, and then moving characters behind the charging characters. And they're also on the sides. There's a couple scouts, guards with missile weapons, and they're shooting arrows back at the party that is like staying back here, like Barry and Barry's kind of there, but like out of it because Dave wasn't here. But Sprawl's back there casting spells. They're shooting at Sprawl. The issue I have right now is like the some of the characters, like their armor classes are getting really good. Like one of the things Lork did while he was in Arden is he had Scion, Barry's mentor, enchant his armor. So he has magical armor. I think it's like +3. He shelled out a ton of coin for it. The dwarves have really good armor classes, especially if they fight anything with the giant subtype. And those big guys are giant subtype. So they're actually kind of hard to hit. Renee is really hard to hit. And Sprawl had cast some spells on him before the combat, so he was buffed really well. I don't think I hit him once during the combat. Like, he doesn't do a lot of damage, but like he is just very, very hard to hit. So I joked that I was just gonna have to make like 15th level monsters the standard, I guess. But no, they're smart that way though. They're tough to hit. So it wasn't a super hard battle. Bodhild took the brunt of the damage because she's a barbarian, but she wasn't buffed or anything like that. And above board, she just has standard equipment. She doesn't have like a ton of magic because it doesn't make sense for her to have any magic items because she hasn't really done a whole lot to, maybe I could come up with a backstory. She would have this, but I don't do that a lot. I do that with some NPCs, of course, because a lot of times it's like I use that for them, like the player characters to get new magic items is they have to beat somebody that has that magic item, and then they kind of earn it. And sometimes they just find the stuff in loot, but a lot of times they have to beat somebody that's using it, so that makes it difficult sometimes for me to realistically give standard NPCs a fair amount of magic. So who knows, maybe the party will find something and they'll give it to her to help her out. Depends on how long she sticks with the party. Anyway, they end up beating these guys, this band, and then checking out the area, they follow the tracks. I think they might have actually camped that night. They realized that they probably took care of any threat in the area. They camped that night. The next day, they kind of come to where the pass is headed down off the saddle of the mountain, and they get this great vantage point of this village, a couple hours from where they're at. But the tracks of this party, this hobgoblin party, are right at this like observation point. So it's to Lork, it's obvious that they came up this pass, scouted, like they were able to spot the village, and they actually were headed further south, probably towards Highhold, to see what was going on there. So it becomes apparent that this band that they defeated was a scouting party. They end up traveling down to this town, this village, not a town, it's a village, and it's nestled in this swamp. So the between two rivers, so it has some natural defenses. And to the south of it it's swamp, and then it becomes the Fingers Mountains range. Really kind of they get down there and they realize it's a fortress. And above board, I designed this village after a place called Trelleborg, which was a Viking village, like a fortified Viking village. And I looked up like pictures of it, and I showed the players pictures of what I was talking about. It has a wooden palisade that surrounds it. It's in like a perfect circle on a berm with gates, and basically, and it's got a small moat, and basically described it to them. And as they approach it, they're hailed by the gate guards up on the wall, and there's a little bit of like who goes there type action. And then Bodhild speaks up and basically like, do we look like orcs and hobgoblins to you? And she's really gruff about it. And they end up letting them in, and they meet the the chieftain of this village, and he's a large Viking-like looking man called what was his name? Ulfric. Ulfric Stormcrow was his name, and they're allowed in and made welcome, and they talk a little bit about they tell them of the war band or the scouting party that they came across, and they're like, yeah, we've had trouble with hobgoblins and stuff in the past. They give them a name of the tribe, which I'm gonna retcon a little bit. And the players, this will be some of them the first time they heard it. It's called the Tribe of the White Skull is what it's called. I had a different name in game because I had to kind of make it up on the fly, and it didn't make sense with the banner that they had actually found with the scouting party, which was a red banner with a white skull and a dagger through it. So it's the Tribe of the White Skull, and that's the hobgoblin party. So, and we pretty much ended there. It was towards the end of the night, so it was a good session. We all had, most important, we all had fun. Really enjoyed all the role play everybody did, like between like what they've been doing for a month of downtime. Everybody really gets into that sort of thing, so I really enjoy doing it. Puts the game back on the players. Like, it's not all about me describing stuff to them. They get to describe stuff to everybody else and take part in it. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing what Matt comes up with for his ale house. Like, he's planning all that out, so I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, and have some sort of involvement with Renee. And then every time Renee comes up with a new dish, and it was pretty good. There's an ongoing banter about I think it happened either in Highhold or when they got to Algen is the name of the Viking village they found. It's called Algen. Renee would talk, and people that haven't been around him, because he has a really distinct accent that's very different than everybody else's. The party starts acting as like an interpreter for Renee's common, which is now become like a running joke amongst the players in the party. So, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, that was session 62. We have another one coming up, I think on the 31st. So, looking forward to that. Hopefully, we'll get Dave, my buddy Dave, will be back. So we'll have the core group of guys once again. They did learn, before I quit, they did learn that there was a group of hunters that had gone out from Algen and were several days overdue and hadn't been seen. So they were wondering if maybe they ran across this warband scouting party of hobgoblins. So they don't know. So that might be something they follow up on. We didn't get too far into that before we ended the session. So we'll see what they do. But their plan is to head north, because they got to reach this pass of 10,000 steps. So we'll see how that goes. Appreciate everybody watching, and I'll catch you at the next one. Thanks.